right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to TrainWorld Live TV on Facebook and YouTube. And we appreciate everyone for joining us tonight. And we have two very special guests tonight. We have Jim Wiggin from Athearn Trains. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, doing pretty good. How about yourself, Ken?
All right, and always good to see you. You're like a regular celebrity now. You got Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, every day.
Yeah,
and,
we got a new album coming out on Friday, so yeah, we're excited.
Very cool. And I do like this new Friday thing. It was a catchy phrase that you used, and I said that was clever marketing. Very cool.
Well, yeah, you know how it's like, Ken, when there's something that's hot and fresh off the presses, or in this case, right from the factory. Yeah, we definitely wanted to get that out there for our fans.
Very cool. And Tony Cook, the regular guest appearance. I feel like you're everybody's special guest appearance these days.
It is crazy. I always love doing the show with you, Ken. And yeah, Jim and I did Athearn Train Tuesday yesterday. So
that's right.
It's been Athearn week for me. Yeah.
Very cool. You guys are gonna get like those bands and roadies where you pop on to different stages and forget what state you're in.
Right.
And everybody out there, put it in the chat. Let's see where you're from. And we got people watching from West Virginia. Jim Frisk saying he loves TrainWorld and Athearn. Northern Vermont. Very nice. Right. So all over, and so very cool. So people from all over. But today, a lot of stuff, and we're going to go over Athearn's Dash 9s. And also, I told Jim the other day, I said, Jim, these SD60Ms, these Tri-Clops engines, they just came in, I'm pretty sure, last week. And I feel like it's one of those announcements that arrivals that just came in. But now that people are starting to see it, they're going crazy. And I guess you posted a couple of videos now, but if you look at those windows, you can see why they call it the Tri-Clops.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Definitely a unique, locomotive. And later on, of course, they went to your standard 2 window design. So yeah, we wanted to do these again, and they've been a huge hit. We've got 2 guys that have reviewed them for us, and we've got another one on the way. So I say it every time on Train Tuesday. I'm pretty sure I missed out on my Cascade Green ones. I think we're sold out.
Yeah, very cool. I actually ended up buying the rest of the SD60Ms with DCC and sound, so I wiped you guys out because you didn't have many left, and it was like they were just going quick out like water. And Tony, I hope you got your order in.
I will go look now. Yes, I'm going to look once we get offline here, because no, I have not picked one up yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe time to slide it in one of those magazine reviews.
There you go.
There you
go. Very cool. So what do you have for us today, Jim?
We're excited because right now, in fact, your customers, they've got until Friday to make their pre-orders. We talked about the Dash 9s. Dash 9s just came out, second run in this series. And, as luck would have it, last week, Janik, one of our product developers out there at Athearn, said, hey, guess what just came to my door? And before I could answer, he sent me some pictures. And they are the pictures of the first run. That was from the pre-order back this summer of 2020, which means that they current ETA is about October is when those will be here. But, it's one thing. I've got this guy here. This is a pre-production sample before it had the paint applied to it and everything. And it's pretty cool. You can see all the details in it. But these pictures that Janik got, they're phenomenal. He sent us some really great pictures, and if you like, we can share those pictures. We can zoom in, and you can see the detail. Let me share my screen here. That sounds familiar.
Now, this is a Genesis 2.0?
Genesis 2.0. So you're going to get the detail that your standard Genesis is not going to have. You're going to have the LED lights. You're going to have ground lights. You're going to have number boards. There's all kinds of cool eye candy. Now, here's the BC Rail version. You guys see that okay?
Yeah.
So, once again, Athearn is committed on not only are we doing the Dash 9, but we're doing the Dash 9 specifically for the road, sometimes by the road number, because we all know they can change from unit to unit. So here's the BC Rail version. You've got the 4 windows. They've got the teardrop window pattern on the edges. You've got the ditch lights, and you've got the rock lights. And I can let me zoom in here a little bit so everybody can see the pilot detail on this. All the way down to the correct orientation of the door, the window, the marker lights, the bell, all of that right there, just for all of our BC Rail fans.
That's awesome.
Just a beautiful locomotive.
Beautiful.
And get some other pictures here of some other locomotives. Now, this one here, I will zoom in on a little bit because I want to show everybody the details. Look carefully.
These Canadian ones are unique. Look at that, the single light in the back and those flash lights on the nose and the bell up front. Both the BC and that first run, I think, isn't it, Jim, on the CN? The later CNs look a little more like the regular production, but this is almost a completely different model that you've done.
Yeah, it is completely different looking than the other ones. And like you said, the later CN ones are more homogenized, if you will. But the BC Rail ones, there was a lot of research had to go into these because, once again, it's a Dash 9, but it's not going to look like a Santa Fe or a BNSF or a UP version. So up next is the Norfolk Southern. Now, Norfolk Southern fans know that there was a couple of things that Norfolk Southern was a little bit they waited a little bit before they went full forward. I mean, Norfolk Southern always, for years, still kept the procedure of long hood forward and consist and on the road. But they didn't really adopt the wide cab or the safety cab as quickly as the other roads. So their initial order was what we would call a Spartan cab now, and that's what we've replicated here. So once again, Dash 9. But this is specifically for Norfolk Southern.
Cool.
It's a nice side shot so you can see the difference in there. And let me see if I've got some close-ups on this particular unit.
But let me get this straight. Janik brings it outdoors, or does he put HO outdoors?
It's a new thing in California, garden railroading on a patio.
Really?
So you got to use HO scale.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, Janik is part of a Fremo HO club. And so he, one of the advantages, there's one of the advantages of working remotely is, of course, with him being in California, he's blessed with usually pretty good weather. But he can take that module outside and get pictures like this.
Very cool. Neat. Beautiful.
Now, we didn't stop, excuse me, we didn't stop there. We went with the UP as well.
And that, finally, I think here, this is when in your mind, you think of Dash 9, this is what I think of. And yet now we're at our third prototype that have all been different. And this, to me, in my head is, well, that's a wide nose, Dash 9. But as you said, NS stayed behind with Spartan cabs. The Canadian ones are different. So all of these have, the detail to them. Everything is like its own separate model, basically, even though they're all in that same production.
Right. And I mean, it's kind of, with modern day locomotives, to somebody that maybe models a different era, it looks all the same. Some people may say, well, modern railroading, it's all homogenized. It's all the same. It's not quite true. It's no different than if you were to go to the dealership and get the family truckster or the pickup truck. You can get different options put on them. And certainly General Electric and EMD are no different. You have here's a good example. There's a different plow that is specifically what the UP wanted. Their number boards, rather on the cab, are on the nose itself. Ditch lights can be mounted on the porch. They can be mounted on the pilot. In this case, we've got them on the pilot. And really the thing that I'm really impressed with is people take for granted how subtle, UP Harbor Mist and UP Armor Yellow is. And even in a photograph like this and the lighting, I thought this really replicated the colors really well for a brand new unit.
It looks really good, and that's one I know my assistant editor and I will point that out on things of that armor yellow color. It seems like such a way, it's just yellow, and it's like, oh, but there's so many models where I think close but not quite. And yeah, these look dead on. They really look great.
They really do. And I can zoom in here on the back portion here so everybody can see the detail. I mean, you can see, you've got your spare couplers on the rear pilot. I mean, I don't know about, I'm sure, Tony, you've done this. I mean, remember back in the old days, sometimes I call it the bad old days, when we'd have to sit down with a number 80 drill and we'd spend all evening drilling little tiny holes to get these stanchions in and to get the grab irons in. And look at how even this is. I'm going to zoom in on that. Just phenomenal that, you don't have to do that as a modeler anymore. You can simply buy the locomotive and maybe weather it up a little bit for your layout.
Yeah, it's really amazing how model trains have evolved over the years. I mean, going back from Tycho back in the days in the 70s, Tony, and you got one of those actually magazines where it's all HO collectibles and stuff. But,
right.
And comparing it to the new models like the Genesis 2.0 is just unbelievable. The progression of what trains has evolved into.
Oh, certainly. And I mean, boy, in the last, Ken, the last, 20, 25 years, as you say, yeah, those old models are, Model Ts compared to like a new car with GPS and all this other stuff. It's eye-popping how it's changed.
That's a very good analogy. And on the older cars, it's a rough ride and everything. And these are just smooth. And
smooth. Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
Now here we got a veteran, Dash 9 for BNSF. This was early in the BNSF life cycle. Heritage 1, which I think looks great on this locomotive. I was always kind of partial to Heritage 1. But Ken, I'm going to throw it out there for you. What's the first thing that catches your eye with this paint scheme or this particular model?
I think the colors just really unique, and of course everybody's BNSF is very popular, so it's just always one of those road names that sell well, regardless.
Yeah, one of the things that we got, especially on social media, was people were noticing the walkways, and I'm like, wait a minute, those look like they're pink.
Okay.
Yeah,
and no, that's not wrong. I can say from my own testimony, I've seen them like this. It's as somebody put it, it's almost a bubblegum pink. I think, Tony, you and I were talking about this yesterday.
I think I said that. Yeah.
What I'm gonna do real quick here. Let me switch screens. I'm gonna minimize this for a second. And I'm going to show you that, this book here, this is from Robert C. Del Grosso. He used to do a great series of books on the BNSF. This is from his Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. That shows you how old this book is. 2004-2005 locomotive review. Now on page 33 is a unit that was in that same numbering system. And I know it's going to be hard to see, but I always used to say when I used to do this custom painting, pictures or it never happened. If you look real carefully there, I know the camera's not doing it justice, but that walkway is a reddish pink color. So
I've got a couple of great pictures here, Jim, we'll look at in a minute of overheads of those Dash 9s. And I think, again, our perspective, when you're on the ground watching a train go by, you don't always see that. And
no, you don't.
You see it from the top, the roof, walkways. Suddenly it's like, wow, if I was painting that I would have never thought of that. So again, that's that research that goes into the models now, Ken, that, I think at one time I wouldn't have expected this to be done on something, and yet now this kind of thing doesn't get overlooked. So again, it almost comes out of, wait, where'd they come up with that color? Why is it bubblegum walkways? It's that's real.
Yeah, cool. Definitely. And I mean, this was
looking from the top side down. Very cool.
Yeah, it's a very cool setup. And I mean, this again, it's so impressive to see the amount of detail that we can have in our locomotives now. I mean, look at zoom in on that. It's just phenomenal. Now, of course, this is all new tooling for Athearn. We spent a lot of time and research and development on getting these. And, you know, here's another good example of, I know back in the day, putting all these little decals on was a pain, but check this out. You can see the builder's plate, GE. I mean, you can basically read that cool. Like you would in real life. It's just amazing. A little bit of weathering, and then the right background, you could probably fool most of your buddies if this is a model or the real thing.
Very neat.
That piping and conduit stuff along the I-beam frame above the truck there, I think that's makes a standout on these. I think that's a filter of some kind there on the left side above the truck. But the fuel fillers and all that is just amazing. I mean, that because these newer prototypes like this, you see that a lot more. There's no skirting or cover over that. So if it's just plain on the model, it is something that you start to notice that it's like, well, there's really no detail to that. But that's got an amazing amount of work to it.
Now, Jim, I got to look at my notes, and but is that on all the BNSF models, or do you have some with that? I guess the pink coloring.
No, that's just on the Heritage ones.
Okay, gotcha.
The Heritage 2s are going to be green, gotcha. And sometimes too. I mean, again, this is why I tell people with these type of models, you really have to, you know, invest into some good some material. Unfortunately, the guys in product development, they have a rather large library. Plus, you know, they're in the middle of a couple of different yards that they can actually get research from. But sometimes, depending on the railroad, BNSF, early BNSF, you really had to pick the model because the walkway on one might be one color and the walkway on the next one beside it could be a different color. So that's why we always say, you know, prototype specific details, not just for the road, but for the actual unit itself.
Right. Very cool. Neat.
So here we've got the Canadian National version. And again, we've got that 4-window. We've got the nice teardrop windows in the cab, very similar to the BC rail that we showed earlier, but you'll notice this one does not have the rock lights. That's a BC rail type thing.
How do those work, Jim? Do you know on the, because the ditch lights that are like that is ditch lights mounted up on the Pilot. So I assume they're either on or flash at like a grade crossing. Are the rock lights, are they basically just like the fog lights on a car or truck?
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy, actually. Yeah, and in Canadian National's version, they've got them on what they, you know, sometimes they refer to them as on the porch, whereas I think it's UP's got them on here on the Pilot lower. So when you see the BC rail, you see the ditch lights and you see the rock lights, and that's exactly what they are. They're just more advanced warning lights for any debris or anything of that nature on the tracks, whereas the ditch lights are not only for that, but for awareness at grade crossings and such.
I love the bell on the Canadian ones between the number boards. That's such a, I mean, that goes back to like some of the Montreal Locomotive Works and early EMD. That's just a signature Canadian feature to have that bell mounted up there. That's really cool.
It really is. And of course, we, you know, a lot of us remember the North American graphic that CN was using at the time when these locomotives were new. We're talking, you know, late 90s, early 2000s.
Very neat.
Now, something I want to show everybody here, and I'm going to zoom in on it so you can see, but if you look at a BNSF or if you look at a UP, the walkways are pretty much solid with a great style to them for grip and such. But the Canadian version, as you can see, is see-through. Can you see the ground through there?
Oh, wow.
Really neat.
So that is something, again, you know, we didn't simply just take the walkway assembly from a BNSF and throw it on this one and paint it CN and call it good. It is specifically for this locomotive because the prototype had this. Obviously, you can probably understand why. With the amount of snow that they get up there, they're going to need extra grip, and they don't need the snow collecting on them like they would with a standard walkway.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't realize that.
So here's one that's a favorite for a lot of the locals around us, the Chicago Northwestern. Man, just too short-lived of a paint scheme. I remember these when I first moved to Illinois, and got quite a few pictures of them from Rochelle. And I always thought this was a cool paint scheme, and it was almost as if the Dash 9 was made for the Chicago Northwestern paint scheme. Just look at the way that flows around the nose. Really, really cool. And again, I will zoom in on the front here for you guys to see. Here again, you know, these are pilot-mounted ditch lights. And if you look carefully, I'll zoom in a little bit more. CNW, they actually reinforce their trucks. You can see this right here is a reinforcement that they had added to their 6-axle trucks for this run. That was specific for Chicago Northwestern.
That's neat.
And isn't that that little like lightning bolt behind the cab there? That's what on contemporary UP, that kind of contribution to the styling or whatever came across, wasn't it? Like these are some of the first.
Yeah, there's been some talk about that. I don't know if it's been officially substantiated, but yeah, the UP, in fact, the Dash 9s that we're doing, and I think even on the SD60Ms, you're going to have that little like sawtooth pattern, and that was hearkening back to the CNW.
Those are sharp looking. That's a great color combination.
Really is, and you know, like I said, it was a paint scheme that didn't last long enough. It was a really cool paint scheme, and soon enough they went under, you know, UP Armor Yellow. Now, if you're a UP modeler and you're modeling, you know, mid to late 90s, you can certainly justify one of these on your roster.
Very neat.
We'll zoom in on this back portion for you a little bit. But as you can see, there you have your standard walkway. So different from the Canadian National one that we just showed you. Standard, you know, GE light, unlike the Canadian versions that just have the one headlight.
Yeah, Jim, that's why these events are so good. And Tony, with you guys yesterday too, a lot of times these announcements, all these details get lost in the sauce. And you know, whether it's Tony writing it in Model Railroad News in the article, or, you know, a virtual show just showing the differences. I mean, you guys spend a lot of time making these unique and really changing the whole process to adapt to what it actually is. So it's nice to be able to show these things and talk about it.
And as you say, Ken, there's so much to it that as I'm writing those things up and putting like a news announcement together, I'm always amazed with, well, wait a minute, that's not the same for this one. I got to talk about this. That you have all the road names and all the variations, and you know, when they go to all the work to create and make that stuff, it's like I get interested in knowing like the little intricacy things and want to make sure that everybody else realizes, hey, this is not the same as that one. I mean, we've seen 4 or 5 so far, and no 2 are alike. I mean,
right.
And yet they're all Dash 9s.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things, and it's a constant, you know, it's a constant thing, especially with our developers, because we live in a world too, where we've had all these mergers. I mean, we were talking about the big merger news over the weekend, Kansas City Southern and CP. So imagine in another year or two, you'll see a CP locomotive, but it doesn't look the same as the CP locomotive next to it because it's a former Kansas City Southern just in CP paint. And so this is some of the stuff that the Athearn development guys have to constantly be on the lookout for. Is that really just a pure UP as delivered locomotive, or is it a former CNW? And that's why all those details and all that research goes into each and every one of these locomotives.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, Tony, you said you actually have some pictures that are kind of like a sneak peek into probably one of your magazines.
Yeah, I've got this. Some of these are pictures that I've used for. I'll go ahead and see if I can figure out the sharing the screen. Did that work?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you make that bigger, Ken, or is that me?
I don't know. For some reason, you want to be big. Hold on. Let's see. Full screen. Here we go.
There we go. There we go. These are pictures from our White River. These are Kevin Udaley's slide collection. And in addition to the magazines, this is one of the things that I do is scan and go through our slides. and for both archiving them and then for use in the magazines. And now this selection that I put together is a mix. The models that Jim has shown us are all from the group announced last August that are due, first part of the fall, maybe third quarter delivery. But then you've also got a new group of Dash 9s that you've just announced in the last month that like Ken would have up for pre-order that are out next year. So I'm going to have a little mix here of both to show. These are the Santa Fe as delivered, and man, was that beautiful. This was the Super Fleet scheme that Mike Haverty brought back, this look of the Santa Fe, from the classic passenger era. And these are the Dash 9s.
We got to tell Jim to take notes for all these different paint schemes on what to do next on this collection.
Well, the good news is what we're showing, what Tony's showing here is we actually have the early Santa Fe from the 600 series in this release. So if your customers are viewing this and they want to, take part of a really cool paint scheme, they need to get with you in order because this is one of the pre-orders right here.
Yeah, I think all of these, everything I'm showing here has been announced.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Is either on the way or is part of this new announcement that, what was that, Jim? Is that this month's or last month's?
Yep.
This month.
This is actually this month's, and it's good until the 26th. So if you like the Santa Fe Dash 9s, definitely pre-order with TrainWorld. And we can go through these and I can let you know what, because we've got some other really interesting roads. Not that the Santa Fe's aren't cool. They are super cool, but we've got some other stuff too.
And like this one, we have a Dash 9 on the front. And I think behind that is the model just before it. And you can kind of tell by the trucks, but I think that's the wide cab just ahead of it, production wise from GE. But man, that guy, and look at that, Ken, you got to sell that guy some scenery. If that's all we can do, come on.
We're gonna start carrying cactus bushes.
There you go. And then this one, explain this to us, Jim, because I know it's got Santa Fe on the nose, but then it's got BNSF on the hood, and all of these units come out in the mid 90s, and BNSF is created about then. So what's the story on these?
Yeah, you remember me saying earlier that the biggest thing you got to do as a model railroader is you got to look. There's a prototype for everything. And in this case, you're absolutely right. BNSF came into being in 1995. These were originally ordered by the Santa Fe. And so that classic cigar band at the front of the nose, they all had that really cool Art Deco font that said Santa Fe. Now, most of these Dash 9s, they didn't really get repainted. They just got relettered. So they took off the sans serif Santa Fe on the sides and added the BNSF. And most of them had BNSF applied on the cigar band on the front, but not all of them. 704 is an example of that, and we've actually replicated that on one of the locomotives in the pre-order.
And that's an interesting at that crossover that stayed the color thing. Here's here's a top shot of those, Ken. You can see the red, and it's kind of got the flip tread. Sure. And then I like this. This is a triple crown. This is a Dan Munson shot in Kevin U. Daly's collection. This is the Triple Crown trailers that they ran for a while. And isn't that interesting how they just got the bogies there and they're pulling the piggybacks? But what a neat shot there. And again, that one, Jim, has the BNSF on the nose. And you're doing both, is that right?
We're doing both, yeah. If you when you get a chance, look at our website, and you'll see that we're offering in the BNSF, early BNSF with the Santa Fe style paint scheme, we're offering 2 road numbers that are the standard BNSF, but BNSF 702, the third in that series, actually is a little bit different, and that it has Santa Fe on the nose rather than BNSF. So that was one of the cool details that we just had to do.
And then your models, of course, too, will have, I think that's called the gull wing cab. That these, if I remember right, there was like a New Mexico coal plant or mine they went through, and they ordered these with this notch in the cab roof design, was called a gull wing for clearance. Yep.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, and so the model will have that too. And here's the 2. We were talking about that H1 Heritage. And I think the other one with like the cigar band look. Which are the 2 there, Jim? 1000.
So your first one that you got there with the circle and the cross with the one thin pinstripe, that's Heritage 1. Heritage 2 beside it came out around 2002. And about this time, about 2002, BNSF had regulated the Heritage 1 to your Spartan cab or switchers, whereas anything that had the wide cab like the Dash 9, they would at that point get the Heritage 2 paint schemes.
These I always thought when these first, I think it's the Dash 8 model that introduced this big radiator thing, and I always thought these had such a neat look and wanted to put this back-end version to kind of show that off, the radiator section. And this is, again, the Heritage 1. And those are almost brand spanking new. Look at that, right out of the box.
Looks brand new, yeah.
Sitting over in the field are a couple of Athearn boxes, and the TrainWorld box with the flyer for the latest sales stuff is sitting over there in that guy's cornfield. Yeah. And there you go.
There it is.
I really like the crisp logo on front.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first, when BNSF, back then, they were called Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. The circle and the cross was, I kind of liked it, being a Santa Fe fan. And Tony, there you go. There's a great picture of the red, almost pinkish walkways on that Heritage 1.
And, it's amazing. And as you say, there's differences throughout, because then look at, that's another order or a different group behind it, and they don't have it. So again, it's kind of hit and miss. And again, these are early. You can tell by the cleanness. Now, we talked about this as being, early BNSF. This is a shot I took. This is at Union Station in Kansas City. And I did this as a 2019 shot. So about a year and a half ago. And there's a Heritage 1. And boy, there's a project for you, Ken. That's something, I know you got a lot of time on your hands to model. I'll get you some weathering stuff. And
it looks like a prime for grime model.
It sure does.
And, even it, you can see I can see that bubblegum colored walkway. Even though it's dirty, you can tell that's a different color. This is a nice picture too, because you see the 3971 behind it is a Tier 4 GEVO, so you can really see, well, what's it, as you say, all this new stuff looks the same. Okay, here's a Dash 9, and look at kind of the flat angled radiator section in the back. But now look at that high peaked roof of 3971. That's a new Tier 4. And then the box ahead of where you see the air horns and then the radiator is the exhaust stuff for the Tier 4 emissions. And then you got a classic old Amtrak Dash 8, one of their 4-axle units that they bought in the early 90s was the end unit on the Amtrak train that was in that day. So, again, you think of these, well, if it's Heritage 1, I don't model, back in the mid 90s, like, well, this is 2019 is one right there. And you can see these did all kinds of work. This is running a executive train when they were new in the Heritage 2 scheme. And then there's Heritage 2 again. This is Union Station in the last year with a nice mix. And this is the thing, nothing ever gets painted all at once on a railroad. And we see 2 there in Heritage 2, the lead and the 4th unit. And then the others are in like that contemporary power bar or wedge paint. And they're, of course, newer models. They're GEVOs. You can see by the radiator in the back.
Cool.
And then here's their CNs with that, as you said, the North American logo. And it is amazing the difference on that nose. It almost looks like it's a different locomotive with the single class lights and the bell. I mean, at first, like, wait a minute, is that? And it's like, yeah, it is. That's a Dash 9. I mean, they are really distinctive.
Very cool.
And they got all over the place. Here's one running on Conrail. Now, this, I think, is in your newly announced group.
This is the newly announced.
If you're looking,
so the 4-window ones that you showed previously, that was the first run, and then the run that's open till Friday is the 2-window version. So what you got right there, and a slightly different paint scheme, more modern, and of course 2-window teardrop, whereas the BNSF and this new release is just a standard rectangular window. CN went ahead with and ordered from GE the teardrop window that you can kind of see there on that picture there.
Very cool.
And then we jump all the way down under. Ken, do you ship a lot of models to Australia?
All the time. Actually, you'd be surprised. Australia is like maybe top 3 in countries that we ship to. There's a huge model train business overseas in Australia, especially G scale too, which is surprising. But a lot of Australians love model trains.
Wow, that's neat. And these, as Jim can tell us, again, it looks like it's a -9. This was an actual trip that our president of White River, Kevin Udaly, took down to Australia with a couple of train guys, and this is what they did: is spent the whole time out in the, I think this is the northwestern part of Australia, basically on the logo on the side of the unit where it says FMG. That gray circle there is about where I think the railroad operates there in Australia. And again, they look like it, but as Jim will tell us, the details all over the place. Like the handrails are different.
Yeah, yep. Tony, do you see the kangaroo in the background?
Where?
I'm just kidding. I had you. It's like a Where's Waldo episode. Very neat. Beautiful stuff. Very cool.
And these are in what you're in the current group that's announced and available for pre-order through this week, right?
Yep. Yeah. This is part of that pre-order. You'll have till, in fact, actually the units that you're showing are the units that we're offering. 007. That's hard to forget that number. And 014. Those are two that we're offering. And if you look carefully, look at the way the stanchions and the handrails are. They're totally different than an American prototype. They're basically two sets of railings there on either side of the locomotive.
And all this is, and the steps, I think, aren't there some step variations even on the North American ones?
There are. The BNSF is going to have 5 steps, and then your other locomotives are going to have the standard steps. I believe the FMG also have the 5-step variant.
And then there we go back to that. I almost see that as it's another one like the Canadian that I almost don't think of it as being a real -9, and it is. Again, as you say, they bought Spartan cabs to the end. Now, what you're doing is got the white background around the number boards and the current Horsehead logo, but this would have been, I think, they're as delivered for those 940s. And then I think this is in the current group, right? So
this is in the current group, yep.
Yeah, so there's both, and that's the white. When I talk about that difference in the paint, if you look at that one behind the headlights and the number board over the cab, I think that's a little earlier without the horse head in the NS, and there's no white up here. And then I think that is the model you're doing, isn't it?
Yes, that is. Yep.
Then I've got just a couple more here. I always love these SPs. This again, just like Santa Fe, the Southern Pacific got these right at the very tail end before they went into the Union Pacific. And I always thought these were spectacular looking with that big Rio Grande inspired speed lettering with on the side of the units. And these hung around forever. These always seem to be the DPU, the units at the end of a coal train, till just the last couple of years. It was always like and then the SP bringing up the rear on a UP coal train.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. And, you know, SP actually came through our neck of the woods out here in Illinois, up into Bloomington. So, yeah, I didn't get to see a lot of these before they got painted up, but I did get to see at least 1 or 2 in my time here.
And as you guys are showing these, we're getting orders in on the select models that you guys are showing. So
it's a great group. You know, there's so much diversity, and I love that you got real models. I said this, I think, to you either last week or maybe on the show yesterday, because when that second group got announced, I'm like, well, I'm really excited, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet because I haven't really got to see them beyond the early mock-ups.
Yeah,
seeing the group you got to share with us today, and then looking at what's coming. And you know the quality of it. That's just neat stuff.
And, you know, if you think about the -9, you know, for guys that are into transition all the way up into the 70s, you know, GP7s, GP9s are kind of the workhorse of those eras. Think about 1993 to 2004 is when the -9s were in production. They were a huge hit for GE, and it actually brought on the high horsepower wars of the new millennia. And so, if you're modeling, you know, 1993 on up, you're probably going to have at least a couple of -9s in your service. So it's a very popular locomotive. It can be seen every time I go rail fanning. I'm going to catch at least a couple in my camera.
Very cool. Well, this was great, and I thank you guys so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure, and I feel like I got to schedule time for both of you because you guys got so many events popping on now.
Now, Ken, is this? I have people say this to me, and I think it is faster than it used to be. But you've been in the business, well, all your life, basically. You know, with your family's store. Do you feel like releases and the stuff coming out in the hobby now is more faster? It's just, you know.
You know what? Everything is so fast paced now that you know, every announcement as a retailer, you have to be on it, and you have to post it 5 seconds after they send out the information, and it's like a rush to get all the information out because all the customers out there, they want the pre-order. They want to make sure that they get it or not get locked out of it or miss out. So it's like nonstop action. It's better than the stock market.
Oh, it's amazing. I had somebody asking me that, and I said, you know, I can't imagine trying to do model railroad news, you know, 30, 40 years ago, 12 times a year, 100 pages each issue. There wasn't enough stuff. And yet now I sit down with my assistant editor every month going, well, the magazine's now at 150 pages. We got to get about a third. We don't have enough room. There's always so much stuff. That's why I put so much out on our website, and it's just always going. Yeah.
Well, you guys have really turned from just like a magazine company and transformed to a digital media company. So, and every company has to change, whether it's TrainWorld and evolve more of the social media, and also Athearn just advancing their products, and also as well, you know, relating to the market that's out there by you guys posting your First Look Friday. What was it? And so everybody's has to adapt, and the information, you know, our customers want that information. You know, everybody craves it, and us as train fans and fanatics, you know, it's like candy. We got to have it. So it's exciting. It's a good time to be a model train enthusiast, and you know, there's so many channels to access this information, whether it's Model Railroad News, TrainWorld, Athearn. So you got manufacturers, you have influencers now, these YouTube channels, Instagram account. So it's just amazing how many people are promoting our hobby, which is great. That's what we all want, because back in the day, and Tony, you could attest, probably 20 years ago, it was like, well, why can't Lionel or someone create a commercial on the Super Bowl? You know, whoever had the most money at the time, and you know, everybody was waiting for a savior for the hobby. But you know, social media has just helped advance the hobby tremendously. So what you guys both are doing is great for the hobby, and we appreciate you coming on tonight to show our customers the detailed differences and the exact models. So we really appreciate it.
And what is it I've got to go shopping for now, Ken? You bought out the SD60Ms?
Yes, the SD60Ms, and it's the Tri-Clops.
Have you got them with DCC and sound?
DCC and sound. I do carry them without sound, but I bought the last of the DCC and sound. I just wiped Athearn out. And Julie is our rep over there, and she does an amazing job. And I tell, just go through each number, tell me the quantity, I'll take them all. so
amazing.
Yep, I make her life easier.
That's awesome. I'm gonna look those over, because I haven't. That one's gotten past me, so I need one. Yeah.
If you want me to put one to the side, I'm not saying I'll do special favors for you, Tony, but I'll do my best.
All righty. Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it.
And Jim, Tony, thank you guys so much. It's excellent. And all the Dash 9s and SD60Ms and Athearn product you could get at trainworld.com. And you can see all the great reviews with Tony Cook, Model Railroad News. And thank you guys so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And have a good night. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us. Take care.
Night, everybody.